We're back here on Jones and Company today, speaking with David Williams and Denver Pratt. Godfrey, Eneas.
Gentlemen, we live in an era of the internet. And we also hear about ISIS and radicalization, how the internet has radicalized a lot of young men and women to adopt this attitude towards, the West. How are young men criminalized?
Well, to take a shot at that, I think young men are criminalized by what they see and what they grow up in their environment. And so that they latch onto that. So they grow up in an environment what they see the older guys do. One of the things I always say that you become a product of your environment, what you see. And that's why it's so important that we have men in our community that teaches us, our young men, great mentorship. We are lacking that in this country. A lot of these young guys who are getting involved in this drug and this criminal activity, I believe they don't actually want to do that. Because most of our prominent businessmen have left some of these inner city and didn't have a chance to give back. Because we're dealing with these young men who are fatherless. The mothers are in the home trying to make ends meet, and they don't have time to raise these men. So what happened is these young men now becomes the product of their society. So they see the guys on the blocks dealing drugs. They see the guys doing these things, and what they do, they become prey. They grab them now and say, "Hey, look here, I need you to do this for me," and they're vulnerable. So here it is, John Doe comes down the road and get him and say, "Look here, I want you to do this. Here's this for you." Never had some funds in his hand before, so he's going to do what John Doe wants him to do.
So you have many young men who are driven by money.
Yes.
And isn't that so today? Back then, in 98, you were driven by money, but you got caught. There are many young men who are in prison today,
right.
David Williams,
yes.
who are still driven by dollars and cents, driven by money, not driven by having a good education or driven by having a wonderful career or driven by how they can create a piece of art or how they can tell a good story, but they are driven by money. Isn't that pretty much the problem among young men and women in the Bahamas, and hence the level of criminality in the society, because we are driven by money?
You know, the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. So to use the word driven by money is not necessarily bad. I am driven to make money, but in my making money is to be a blessing to society, is to help, is to give back. You know, if the opportunity presents itself, and I know it will, I would like to be able to go into the communities, encourage the young men to start businesses and have some seed money. It'll be good if, as each person graduate from this program, I could give you $1,000 seed and say, start your business.
Yeah, so, but you are driven to help people.
That's my point. So
you are driven to help people, and you need to make money in order to do that.
Right.
But money doesn't drive you. Is it your ambition to become a multi-millionaire, or is it your ambition to really help as many people in the society as you can?
Becoming a multi-millionaire is a blessing from the Lord, and as a result of it, I'd be able to help even much more persons. But I understand the point, what you're saying when you refer to the fact that they're driven by money. See, because you can take anything and use it for positive or for negative. And what has happened is that drive for money has been for negative reason, and is a negative, they look to negative things, like Denver gave his testimony. So Denver could decide that he want to have money. As a matter of fact, who does Denver at that point in his life emulate? I would want to emulate the persons in this country who are successful in business and who have money. I want to emulate those persons.
David, slow down a minute now. There are people who emulate or seek to emulate a drug dealer.
Oh, agree.
Or they seek to emulate a gangster.
Right,
And
agree.
there are many of them who operate and they have a whole lot of money, they have a whole lot of things.
Yes.
But should we be driven and to the point where we wish to emulate those type people?
Well, definitely not. And I think, and I think it has to do with the fact that Denver mentioned it. There has to be some moral values instilled inside of these persons, right? And because they lack, to use the way the father figure example. One time I was doing a teaching in Maximum, and I asked how many men in here did not grow up with a father. 80% of those young men raised their hands, right? Not that that's an excuse, because I didn't grow up with a father, and I'm sure there might be others. But the point is, this is why you need positive reinforcement. You need a male role model. And this is what we're seeking to do, become that male role model in the lives of young men who does not have a father. So in the absence of a father, maybe there's an uncle. You see, there's a grandfather. There's somebody else who can guide and direct them on the path that this is the right way to walk in it. And the other thing, personal responsibility. Young men today must dare to be a Daniel. Who's a Daniel? A Daniel is one who must decide to stay out of the crowd, stay away from the crowd.
Okay. Let me put this to you. You go to the correctional institution in Foxhill,
right?
And you have a meeting with 20 or 30 inmates.
Yes.
And you talk to them. Can you say, this fella, he got a criminal mind. This fella, he can be rehabilitated. Are you able to do that diagnosis?
I'm not professional in that area, but
what I mean, based on how they talk,
how I communicate,
and how they
not how you communicate, but how you
interact with them.
Yeah.
This is why. And Denver would agree with me, we point persons to the only person who can transform and change this mind, that's Jesus Christ.
Yeah, but you see, let me tell you why I asked you that question.
Right.
We've had educators on this program.
Right.
And they've told us, right? In primary school, they can pick out the criminals. You know what they tell us?
Well, I'm not a believer in that. No, I don't believe that.
The point is, aren't there people, Denver, and you've been in correctional institutions where you have seen a whole lot of young men who, as Mr. Eneas said, you know, their nature is to be involved in criminal behavior and criminality. And we're talking about a criminal mind.
Yeah, they always choose the dark side.
Yeah. And it's difficult to reach them because they are so engrossed in criminality and their minds are working towards the dark side.
Yeah, part of our job, Mr. Jones, is that if we notify those young men, we cannot give up on them. All right, we cannot give up on them, and the reason is because God has never give up on us. I believe if you continue consistently speak into a life, a young man, you might see change. The change might not come the first day or the first week or the first month, but continually speaking life in them, you will see change with them. I shared this story before that growing up in a household with 10 siblings, Mr. Jones being the youngest one, my mother was a waiter who worked over Paradise Island Bridge and took care of 10 of us. Thank God for her. Her soul rest in peace. She died in 1981. And I asked myself, now, how did she do it? With 10 of us, me being the young. My father was never in my life. The first time I saw my father was at a funeral. And when I get incarcerated, I wrote my father and I told him, I said, I'm not writing you because I locked up. I'm writing you because I'm changed. God came into my life and changed my life. Before that, I didn't care whether my father lived or died. I could remember very vividly, Mr. Jones, going downtown to the Tommy store. This was a Saturday, a day before our Father's Day. And I was picking out a shirt. And the sales lady asked me a question. that one will be nice for you. Why don't you pick out one for your father? And I say, for my father. And I said this directly to her. And at that time, I was really mad and angry. I say, my father. If he knows what's the best, the only thing I get for him, he better duck, because he was never in my life, and I had that resentment for him. But as God came in my life, He gave me that peace and understanding, and He allowed me to forgive him, and now we are best friends. And so many young men are so angry because they don't have a connection to their father. And what happened is we living in an unforgiving world, an unforgiving society. You know, sometimes, Mr. Jones, you go to prison and people have that over your head, and they say, okay, you been to prison. But my thing is, some of us are in prison and don't even know it. You know what I'm saying? If God can forgive you, why you can't forgive me? And that's what we have to do. 85% of those individuals, I think you mentioned it earlier, I think we have about 2,000 individuals in prison. 85 of them, Mr. Jones, are coming back in our society, in our communities.
Right.
So the question is, what are we going to do?
Yes.
They already done their time.
Yes.
And what are they going to do when they come into the communities? Are we going to reject them? Are we going to not employ them? Are we going to hold that stigma over their head and say, okay, you've been locked up, you don't deserve a second chance? And that's why so many of these individuals are going back to the lifestyle of going into this criminal lifestyle, because they get rejected time and time again.
And it could be, Mr. Pratt and Mr. Williams, because they have not been properly rehabilitated.
It could be.
It could be that the rehabilitation programs in the Bahamas are not effective. Hence, the level of recidivism
It's high
in the country is extremely high, because young men incarcerated 4, 5, 6 years, when they come out, there is not a change of mind. Because they have not gone through an effective rehabilitation program. And no wonder a whole lot of people refuse to give them a second chance, because they do not show that they have been rehabilitated. There are people who have gone to prison who come out of prison wanting to go back. And they want to go back because the living in prison is not too difficult. You can get 3 square meals a day. You don't have to work too hard.
Mr. Jones, I beg to differ a little bit. We go over there we go to prison on a weekly basis, and I'm telling you, in maximum where you have almost 5 to 6 individuals in a 5 by 7, I don't know. It ain't no Marriott. I can tell you that much.
Yes, but the point is, they're not working hard. You don't see them out in the community working, do you? They're not working hard. They are being fed. The living accommodations that they have, it's not ideal at all. As a matter of fact, it is criminal to have criminals in a 6 people in a 5 by 7.
Yes,
That is a criminal. That is criminal too.
That's inhumanity.
That's him, exactly.
Inhumane as well as criminal. Now, people don't like to hear that. But if you stack 6 men in a 5 by 7 with a pail in the corner, all right, what you are doing, you are further criminalizing these people, because you are dehumanizing them.
I agree.
And so, if you are dehumanizing them, how can Prison
Rehabilitate
International be effective in any rehabilitation program in a place where you have 6 men in a 5 by 7 space?
I think, Mr. Jones, there's time now for us to talk to those who are in leadership at the prison and give them some suggestion on how to move forward. They have changed the name from prison to correctional facility to rehabilitation. So we want to sit down with them and give them some suggestions to how we can change this a problem up there.
But I had an inmate on a program here, and who said that he is sleeping in a cell. He is sleeping. A fella's foot is by his head. All right. and his mouth is at another fella's foot, and they are stacked in a prison, how can any real rehabilitation take place?
No.
You know,
They are stacked like sardines in a 5x7, and you can smell the stench from the. How can that?
I agree that
That is like the hellhole of Calcutta.
there's a long way to go, and I agree that the Department of Corrections, there's so much more that they can do.
No, but the point is,
Right.
how can your organization, Prison Fellowship International,
Influence them.
how can you function properly
Yeah.
and make a difference in that kind of situation?
And Prison Fellowship International, because they don't necessarily get involved from the government level, right? You deal with people at the prison, and this is why we talk about programs to implement the same mind that you talk about, transformation, the change of the mind. You see, because in spite of the conditions you just described, I don't want persons to come from behind those bars to use that as an excuse. You see, that's why I use the word dare to be a Daniel, dare to make a difference, transform this mind.
How can you have the transformation of the mind in that kind of situation?
I call it the power of choice. We all have the choice. We have the power of choice.
You're dehumanizing a human being.
Yes, but
and those conditions, you see, part of the problem, Mr. Williams, to this recidivism, right, could be the prison infrastructure. If the infrastructure was better, right?
I agree.
People would programs like yours would have an opportunity to work, and a fellow would not want to go back. You know, I'm not lauding or praising his situation, right?
Right.
But I bet he can tell you when he was in the States, he never was in a situation where he had more than 2 people in the cell.
Exactly.
All right then.
Right. So we agree.
And so real rehabilitation can take place.
Yes.
Yes.
But you need conditions.
And so the conditions you must live in commodious situations
Yeah.
in order for for rehabilitation to take
place.
Because you said a while ago that you are a product of your environment. Now let's imagine that you were incarcerated for 10 years
With 5 fellas in the room.
with 5 fellas in a 5x7 room.
You're angry when you come home.
You would be angry.
Yeah, I think part of me would be angry too, but Mr. Jones is still, and Dave said something earlier about choice and a mind change.
That's it.
We got to go back there. And for me, with my change, and I tell people this everywhere I go, is that God had to come into my life and change me.
Right.
The mind change. If you don't have that mind change, you go back. I could have come out of prison and go back into the game.
Okay, let me give you an example.
Game.
Yes.
Let me give you an example. You take the enlightened countries, right? The Scandinavian countries, right? Where they approach incarceration from a totally different perspective, right?
Okay.
They have weekend visits.
Uh-huh.
They have conjugal visits.
Yes.
Where in some cases the wife is able to bring the children to the prison,
Right.
and they have a special room where
Yes.
and so you're trying to change the hardness of a man's heart.
Yes, agree.
You see,
You know, all you do is you put a fella in 5 days, you are hardening his heart.
you see,
That's what you're doing.
your punishment is when you are removed from mainstream society.
Yeah.
That's the punishment. That you lose your freedom and you are incarcerated. And so you are placed in this correctional institution for 5 years or 10 years. Removing you from society is punishment.
Yes.
But you do not dehumanize a person
Agree.
by putting them in a hellhole with 6 fellas in a room, no bathroom facilities,
Right.
but a bucket to be shared by 6 men in a room.
Yes,
Tough.
agree.
Yeah.
I
Tough.
just last week.
Now,
Uh-huh.
how can transformation of the mind
Take place.
in that situation?
There's one thing that individual has that all of us has. God has given him or her the power of choice. There's a young man who's been in prison for 21 times. I just saw that young man the same week. He's still doing the same thing.
Why do you think so?
Because he has made a choice to go back. Yes,
But
yes.
he's not been reached.
No, he is.
He has not been reached.
But
He has not been
when
reached.
over the years going there and sharing with him,
He's not been influenced.
right? He never made the choice to decide. Well, you know what? Okay, let's say the spiritual side. You've never made the choice. Let's put the spiritual aside. I said to this young man, listen to me. You cannot go back into the same environment when you come from behind these prison walls. He made the choice to go right back into that same environment, the power. And I bet he'll come here and tell you, oh, well, the prison, I sleep in the cell with 10 fellas. I this and I that. He has to make a choice to decide that, you know what?
Mr. Williams, when you talk about this rehabilitation, right? You're talking about changing people's behavior,
Agree.
right? There's a behavioral change that these individuals have to go through, right? I know God is very important in all these things, right? But he says in the program over and over repeatedly, the glory of the Lord is seen in your intelligence.
So can we agree that no matter what programs an individual can we agree that no matter what rehabilitation programs individuals goes into, the only way it can change if they make the choice, because you can give them the comforts of life, but if they decide that in their minds this is what they want to do, they'll do it. It has to be a mind change.
So tell me, what you wasting your time for then with Prison Fellowship International? If you believe what you just said,
What I'm saying,
obviously, it is expected of you to have a ministry so that you are able to reach these people, to influence them.
agree.
All right?
Change their behavior.
And you yourself must be well prepared to reach them psychologically.
Yes.
All right? And if you cannot do that, then you shouldn't be where you are.
Well, definitely.
Let's take a break here.
Okay.
This is Jones and Company. We take this break, we'll come right back.